It's good to be here this morning to share with you the work that went on in Vilnius. As I mentioned, in this hour, we're going to look specifically at the church. We're going to meet some members and some visitors of the church there. There's a very good chance that Joseph and Givla are watching our live stream. So if they are, labas, Joseph and Givla, and to our friends in the Netherlands, Dolde Vicher. It's an interesting congregation in its makeup. There are probably about as many visitors as there are members, or close to it. And the reason that is the members just keep on inviting people. And I made that point with Joseph. We kind of discussed that. And it's most of them, they're just simple people, just average folks. And most of them don't feel like they can discuss a doctrinal or spiritual question with somebody. Especially in Lithuania, where people, let me just say, it's not like Texas. You don't walk by a Lithuanian on the street and say, "Howdy, how you doing?" They'll probably look at you like you're kind of weird. Lithuanians are rather reserved. Once you start a conversation, you get to know them a little bit. They're very warm and receptive and responsive. But you just don't walk up to a Lithuanian and say, "Hi, do you believe in Jesus?" They're going to probably try to wave down a cop or something. So, but as I said, once that relationship is there, which I found in the church, they are very willing to share their concerns and their questions. So I left here early Tuesday morning, had no problems on the flight out. 6-hour layover in New York, then flight to Helsinki, and then it's just an hour and a half down to Vilnius from there. Joseph met me at the airport. We stopped by a restaurant that was close to his house and had lunch together and kind of renewed the relationship. And then took me to his place and let me get settled in, and right away, this young lady came over. Her name is Yolanda. She lives in the same neighborhood with Givla, that is this lady here, Joseph's wife. She's only been a Christian for about 6 months, but she just wanted to come by and say hi and just have a discussion. And so first thing she wanted to know about me is, how did you become a Christian? So I gave her my conversion experience, my testimony, how I came to obey the gospel. Then I asked about her. Hers is there's a lot went on that I just don't have time to explain. Many of these folks come from difficult backgrounds and have gone through an arduous journey to find Jesus. But they stayed with it because they knew what they were looking for. And as God promised, He is not far from any one of us that He might be found. But we prayed together. I tried to give her some encouragement, and so she went on her way back home. And the next morning, Joseph and Givla and I spent some time working on a list. Members, non-members, prioritizing who to go see, which we just about hit the whole list in the 3 weeks we were there. And then we had lunch with these two brothers. This is Joseph. Whoops, back it up. This is Joseph right here. So now you know who I've been talking about all morning. This is Sergei and his brother Vladimir. They are native Lithuanians. We're at a Persian restaurant in downtown Lithuania. So here's an American eating Persian food in Lithuania. I guess that's what happens these days. And although you can't see her, she's working back here. There's a lady in this restaurant named Sarah. She is an Iranian immigrant that attends services there regularly. She hasn't obeyed the gospel yet. But more about her in a second, because there's a really cool story about her. But Vladimir, turns out, works with a house church in Kaunas, which is the second largest city in Lithuania. It's right about dead center in the country, about an hour and a half or so west of Vilnius. And he invited Joseph and me to come out that Sunday to meet with the brethren there. So that was a door that the Lord opened up, because as Joseph pointed out, that church did not exist 2 years ago when I had originally planned to go. Now it's up and running, and I had the opportunity to go and encourage those brethren. So I asked Vladimir what would be good to talk about. What are some of their needs? What's on their mind? And he said, well, why don't you preach from Revelation? They want to know about the end times. No problem. Not a problem at all. I had a week to get prepared. But he also noted that there's a question among some of them as to how one can know that they're saved. And that, of course, is the more important question than delving into the end times and Revelation. So we'll meet the church there in a moment, but that's how that got hooked up. We had a real nice lunch with these two brothers. They've been members of the church there in Vilnius for a long time. Sergei takes care of his 94-year-old mom there in Vilnius and is a very faithful and strong member. This next picture, and we'll come back to Sarah here. Sarah's not in this picture either. She's got a busy schedule. In fact, the reason I didn't get a picture of her at the restaurant is because it was business lunch hour. And so that place was just busy as all could get out, and she's behind the counter. All I really got to do is say hi to her, and then I unfortunately didn't get to see her the rest of the trip, because it turned out she was getting ready to go back to Iran for 10 days. So be praying for Sarah. That is not a happy place to be right now, especially if they find out that you are thinking about Jesus Christ. And some more about that here with this young lady. Here's Joseph again. This is Sharon. She is an Iranian immigrant, spent time in Kuala Lumpur, and now lives in Vilnius going to university. She is finishing up her master's in marketing communications, and she may be obtaining that this week, in fact. This is Lisa, or she likes to go by Elle. She's an American who lives in Minsk, the capital of Belarus. And I asked her, so what's the vibe there with an American Christian in a country ruled by a Stalinist dictator who avows himself as a Stalinist dictator? He's proud of the fact that he is the last total dictator in Europe. Well, she said, it's a little weird. You can't just go around talking about the gospel, and the church there has to kind of stay on the quiet side. But they do operate. There's been a church in Minsk for years. And she was on her way back to the States here, to Ohio, because her dad is ill. And then while we were there, he passed away. And she wasn't able to get back in time to see him, unfortunately. But she is here for the funeral. This is Barbara. She is Polish. She lived for years in Morocco. And for about the last 4 years, she moved to Lithuania and lives there now. She, being an immigrant, got to know Sarah, the Iranian immigrant that works at the restaurant. So she invited Sarah to services. Well, Sarah is friends with Sharon. And so Sarah invited Sharon. And now they all come to services as regularly as they can, and none of them is a believer. They have not obeyed the gospel yet, but they are seeking the Lord. And I reassured them both. She's not obeyed the gospel yet either. She considers herself a Christian, but she has not been baptized. I just pointed out, as long as you are seeking, you will find. You're knocking at the door, as David pointed out this morning, it will be opened unto you. So keep seeking. Keep looking. Keep seeking God. He's not far away. He'll allow himself to be found. Now, Sherin understands that she cannot go back to Iran. So she can't go back to see her family. or anything. She is in Lithuania now because she does not accept Islam and she does not accept Zoroastrianism, which is the ancient religion of Iran. Because Iran is Persia, is the remnants of Persia. And once they find out that you are thinking about Jesus, they don't like that very much, especially with the atmosphere over there now. So there's no way she's getting back home. But we had a delightful lunch. It was wonderful to get to meet these sisters and well, Sister L, and these two young ladies that are searching for the Lord. That Friday night, every Friday night they have a meeting with the young people, sort of a Bible study and discussion. So this is the first one we had. This is David right here. He'll come back into the story in a minute. This is Stepanos, Yosas, Victoria, Sharonis, and Dinas. Stepanos and Sharonis were the most engaged in our discussion. And since this was the first one, I wanted to just kind of get to know them and let them get to know me. So I just basically threw the meeting open to them. What questions do you have? What is on your mind? I asked them first, what do you think about the Bible? Because none of these young people is a Christian at the time we were meeting. To put us to shame, this young man, Sharonis, rides the bus 1 hour one way to come to this meeting every week, and then an hour back. And he's not even a believer. So think about that. But I asked, what do you think about the Bible? How do you view it? Well, Stepanos said it's special to me. It's not special, but it's special to me. Okay. Sharonis said, well, it's a very good guide to live your life by. And so it's interesting that these unbelievers are kind of zeroed in on the Bible as being the best guide that they have found as to how to live a good life. I also asked them, and this was a really interesting response. I asked them, what is your biggest challenge in your everyday life? They're all high school students except for David. He's 23. Said, what's your biggest challenge? And Sharonis answered, temptation. He said, the temptations of the flesh bother me a lot. So he's familiar enough with what the Bible teaches to know that there is a standard to follow, and it's tough to meet that standard. And so I just made the point, yes, it is tough to meet that standard when you're trying to get there under your own power. You need the help of Jesus Christ to accomplish that. So I said, what questions do you have for me? And Sharonis asked the very first one. He said, how did you become a Christian? Did you have a religious upbringing? I said, no, which is important to point out because being young people, they're skeptical. You can see that by how they view the Bible and how they view Jesus. He's a great religious leader, but nobody special. And the reason he was asking me how I became a Christian and did I have a religious upbringing is because it's a very popular naturalist thought that people become attached to the religion that they grow up in their culture, in their environment. So I'm a Christian because America is a Christian nation. A Muslim becomes a Muslim because they grow up in an Islamic nation. So I made sure I pointed out my family was not religious. There were no Christians in my family at all. We never talked about God. He was never part of our thoughts. So I did not have a religious upbringing. And in fact, if we're going to go down the line, who were the first Christians? They were devout Jews. They were certainly not raised in a Christian environment. And yet, they became Christians. So I wanted to point out the fallacy of that particular view. But I also wanted to point out to them that what really matters, it's not what your upbringing is or your environment, it's whether you want to know the truth and whether you're seeking the Lord. If you're doing that, then, like I mentioned before, he'll allow himself to be found. Well, here is their building. This is the first Sunday I preached. Very interesting. I didn't take a picture of it, but if you turn around, it's nothing but apartment blocks around this whole area. And this used to be the corner store in the apartment block. But a wealthy American purchased the property for him, had it completely remodeled, and so now this is where they meet. The Vilnius Christ Church Biblical Study Center. So that's their building where they meet. They own it. It's theirs. It's very nice on the inside. And here I was getting ready to preach the first Sunday. There's Barbara again. There's Zhivla. Interesting dynamic here. Back here on this row are some folks that only speak Russian. This young lady, Sophia, also speaks pretty good English and Lithuanian. So the Russian speakers sit on the back row here, and as I'm preaching in English, either Zivila or Joseph is standing next to me translating it into Lithuanian, and Sophia's back here translating it into Russian for them. So it's an interesting dynamic. And when we're singing songs, there's their little songbooks. They sing pretty much the same songs we do. We would be familiar if we were there singing with them. Only some of them are only in Lithuanian. Some of the songs on the page, they'll have the song in English and in Lithuanian. Some of them are just English, and some are just Lithuanian. So if one was just in Lithuanian, Joseph would pick the number they were going to sing and say, it's to the tune of such and such. Well, then now they're singing it in Lithuanian, and I'm singing along in English. But it's the same song, and God's hearing the words. So just a marvelous situation. Here's Sergei that we saw at the restaurant. Back here, you can't really see him, as a young man named Christianos, a fine Christian. He lives in the same neighborhood as Joseph. Been a Christian for a while, knows what the scriptures say, and it was really delightful to get to be with him. Here is the church in Kaunas. Right after services were done that Sunday in Vilnius, we drove about an hour and a half, stopped for a quick lunch at Hesburger, which is about the equivalent of McDonald's. It's Finnish, so Finnish hamburgers in Lithuania being eaten by an American. But here is the church at Kaunas, and their situation is a little, I don't know what this building is used for. They rent it, but I'm not sure if it's a nursery school or what it is, but they make do with it, and we basically just have a Bible study. And so here we are dealing with the first question, how do I know I'm saved? And I'm just going through 1 John. Then we got to Revelation, and I said I'm not going to talk about Revelation. I'm just going to show us how the Bible uses that phrase, end times, or end of the ages. And they understood by the time we were done that it refers to now. That we've been on the end times for the last 2,000 years. So we don't have to look forward to some future time of tribulation and weird signs and everything else that's going to signify the beginning of the end times. So I think that helped them out quite a bit. Let's see. What's next here? Okay, yeah, here's the church at Kaunas again after our study. And as we were getting ready to leave, five of the members here, or five of us, are visitors from Vilnius. Several came up with Joseph and me and Vladimir, who drove us. But here's that little house church in Kaunas that the Lord just opened the door to bring some encouragement and a little bit of knowledge to. The next day, I'm sitting in my room that they provided for me, very nice room, doing some studying and working on some stuff on my computer. And Joseph pops in and goes, "We're going right now to lunch because David wants to meet with us." And this is that young 23-year-old man that was in the young people's Bible class. And I really wanted to talk to him because he wants to be baptized. But he's going to wait till next June because they have a summer camp and he wants to do it then when he can have friends around and they'll be able to celebrate. Well, of course, right away then, he doesn't know what baptism is all about. So I explained to him, here's what baptism is for, and here's why every example we see in Acts shows us that they did it immediately. They didn't wait even till the next day. So we went through those examples and I laid that out for him, and then Joseph and I just shut up and let that simmer for a little bit. And then I asked him, "So what are you thinking about, David?" He said, "Well, I think I need to do it today." So, but he wanted to do it at a special place. Their lakes are all over the place there in Vilnius. It's beautiful. It's kind of like Minnesota, land of 1,000 lakes. But there was a lake there, Green Lake, just outside Vilnius with a little special spot, and that's where he wanted to be baptized, and he wanted people there. Well, that not everybody has private transportation in Lithuania, in Vilnius. So one thing that worked out is that evening we had the regular Tuesday night ladies class that Živela has and Joseph have over at their house. This is Dinah, who lives in the basement under Joseph's house, and don't think basement, think basically underground apartment. It's really a nice flat, but they're letting her stay there rent free so her and her husband can kind of get on their feet. But Dinah's there. Dinah's sister Liliana, who is not a believer. Here's Yolanda again with her husband Arturas and Živela. And so we just had some good discussions, and I let them ask their questions, which were basically, what about infant baptism? What about praying to the saints? Basically, as I've mentioned, tradition-based questions that's coming out of a Catholic viewpoint. But we had a real good discussion. Arturas is very quiet. He really didn't say much. He's an unbeliever also. But it was really a great study. So from there, since we had all these people together, we went out to the lake. Here's David. This is Paul, the 8-year-old son of Joseph and Živela. This is Ella, their 6-year-old daughter. Here is Tia, their almost 18-year-old daughter. And this is Christianos that I just mentioned, real godly man. So we're gathered at the lake, and you might notice it's nighttime. And being out at the lake, there are no lights. So this is about the best shot I could get with my camera. They're stepping out into the lake in order to be baptized, for Joseph to baptize David. And upon his confession, he was immersed in water and raised to walk in newness of life. And there he is, sopping wet, and we're standing there singing hymns and praying in celebration. So if right after this I'd had to get on the plane and come home, it would have been worth it, just for that. But there's still a lot more to do. This is Laura. She's not a very old Christian. She hasn't been a Christian very long. This is her at work. She is the administrator for XFM.LT, which is the only Christian radio station in Lithuania. And she's been working there for about 3 months. One thing they do is they have various preachers in town record 5-minute spots. So they can just, whatever they're going to talk about, and then they play it through the week. So because she works there, she got Joseph invited to record some spots. And so we did that. I went with him down to the station, and you might not be able to see it. I'm in the sound booth, and here's Joseph doing one of his spots, or getting ready to do it. He'd be wearing headphones if he was recording it. But after we got done and came back out, Laura says, our program director is interested in doing a live interview with you. That's me. Okay. How's that going to work out? She says, you can come tomorrow at 8:30 or 9:30. Okay. It's a 2-hour show from 8 to 10 in the morning, drive time, that's high value airtime on the radio. So we chose 9:30 to give us a little bit of time to get there. Where are we? Here we go. So here we are in the studio getting ready, and this is Ustinas. Best picture we could get because he was kind of blowing through there just when Joseph was taking the picture. And he is the one who conducted the interview. So this is a live interview. They don't usually do that. Usually the people he talks to are call-ins, or it's an interview on the phone, but this is in studio. So he asked me questions like what my background was, why I came to Lithuania, and I mentioned I am part Lithuanian, so I have an interest in the country, but I was here before and I've come back to help Joseph. So he said, well, what results have you had? I said, well, last night we baptized a young man into Christ, so that was a wonderful thing. He asked about the nature of the podcast that Danny and I do every week, and he promoted it. So we're kind of seeing if there's going to be a spike coming out of Lithuania by some people who might listen to it or not. His final question, he asked my views on the difference between religion in Lithuania and the U.S. If I'd had time to think about that question, I didn't know that was coming, being a live interview, I probably would have given a different answer. I just told him, well, a fundamental difference is here in Lithuania, it's primarily Roman Catholic with some Russian Orthodox mixed in. In America, it's a lot of Roman Catholic. There are few Orthodox churches around, but the rest of it, you can take your pick of 10,000 different churches, whatever you want. If I'd had time to think about it, I would have said, well, probably, I don't know the situation here in Lithuania, but most of religion in America is for entertainment. And then we would have seen if he would have expanded on that, but it didn't work out that way. So anyway, that went out on the air. Very interesting. It was good to meet Ustinas. They consider themselves an evangelical radio station. So they're evangelical Protestants. They're not. The Catholics have their own radio station, but there again, Laura wasn't working at the radio station when I was in Lithuania in 2019 with Ray. In fact, I don't think she was even a Christian. But now she works at the radio station, got Joseph set up to where he can do regular spots to promote the truth, and got a live interview with this American visitor. So who knows what the Lord's going to do with that. It did provide some indirect fruit a little later on, and we'll look at that. This, I can't go, yeah, I can go back. Let me show you somebody. If I can get back there, and we're going to go over time. Okay, this young lady right here is named Gitana, single mom, really struggling and having a difficult time. But after the second Sunday there, Joseph came up to me and said, Gitana wants to be baptized. Wonderful. Where's she coming from, though? So we sat down with her after services, asked her, let her ask any questions she had. One question was about infant baptism. What's that all about? Because almost all of these people have been baptized as babies. And then she wanted to know, how is this going to change my life? I said, well, wait and see. You have no idea. So this is the best picture I could get. Joseph is baptizing her in a bathtub in Dinah's flat, because that was the only place available. And it was so crowded in there, I think I just kind of bent around the door and stuck my camera up there to try to get a shot. But that is her obeying the gospel. So second baptism there. This is Noyes Andrukaitis. He is a friend of Joseph who lives in Kaunas, and he just happened to be in Vilnius for these few days. And he said, I heard your interview on the radio, and I wanted to come over and talk. So Joseph said, come on over. We had a real nice discussion. He's not your typical Catholic. He's very ecumenical in his thinking. He's devoted to serving other people. He's all about that. But afterwards, he mentioned to me that how much he appreciated having someone he could sit down to and talk about spiritual things and personal challenges. And so since he lives in Kaunas, Joseph is not going to have a chance to really spend time with him regularly. So I said, why don't we hook up on Messenger, on Facebook, and that way we can continue talking. And he was all for that. I will say this trip made me a Facebook person. I've never been into Facebook, but I got a zillion contacts on Facebook now, and that's a good thing. This next one, this is Neromantis and his wife Renata, both Catholics. They have visited the church on occasion, but they wanted to get together, so we met with them and had a really nice lunch. She makes awesome homemade bread. But we talked for 2.5 hours basically on what about the Roman Catholic Church? How does it fit? What is its role? She wanted to know about priests and praying to the saints and what is it about infant baptism. So I explained all of that to them. And Zhivla told me later that after we were done talking, Neromantis came up to her and said, we need to start attending regularly. And I am going to make sure we get there. And the next Sunday, my last Sunday there, they were there. So hopefully that will continue. There's a seed that's planted now that, Joseph can do some watering on it, and we'll see what the Lord provides. But they're a great couple, really, really friendly. She is sharp. She was asking some really good, insightful questions. So I have no doubt they're going to find the truth. That it's just their choice what to do with it. Here is the last Saturday night I was there. We were doing a seminar on how to survive in difficult times, which was a good topic. The public was invited, but Joseph realized he made a timing mistake because this was a 4-day weekend. It was a national holiday, so most people were out of town. But we had 12 folks there, mainly members. This is Zhivla translating for me. That's what it looks like when you're preaching. It's either her or Joseph translating it into Lithuanian. And then my last Sunday in Vilnius. This is Ruta. She's a member, a Russian speaker. There's Sherin, the Iranian that I told you about. Here is Kitana, our newest Christian, and her friend Dinah. Here is Renata and Neromantis, who said they were going to be there, and they were there. So here's Christianos, and the only time that I saw his wife, and I can't remember her name. Kind of a reserved, quiet person, nice, but I really didn't get to meet with her or anything. So that is 3 weeks in Lithuania. I'm thankful that it was busy. That's what I wanted to be. I wanted to get some work done over there to help encourage the saints and help Joseph with the work. I've talked to a lot of you about the amazing doors that God opened. who would have even thought to suggest I'd wind up doing a live radio interview in Lithuania, one of the Baltic states. What's the Lord going to do with that? I don't know. They do stream, so you can get on XFMLT 94.9 on the radio dial. Only problem you're going to run into, it's all in Lithuanian. So, but it was just a wonderful experience. And what made that all possible was your prayers. God opened those doors because of the power of prayer and Him making it possible for me to be over there at that time and in those places with the right people in place and the right opportunity for Him to work His will. And it just reaffirmed to me what a wonderful God we have. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I apologize going long on this, but I hope it's been thoughtful for you and instrumental and enlightening to see what's going on in a foreign country, a European country. I have spent most of my time in Asia in my travels. This is my second time in Europe. Joseph and I are kind of kicking the ball around about going back a third time. We'll see. I mean, there are opportunities. There's stuff to take advantage of and to follow up on. So be praying about that because we haven't really settled on that yet. But please keep that in your prayers as you kept me in your prayers all these 3 weeks. And I am convinced the Lord acted on those prayers. So this wasn't me in Lithuania, it was all of us. We were working together, and the Lord brought the increase to His glory. So just like over there were people looking for the truth. When they heard it, they just zeroed right in on it. A couple of them obeyed the gospel because they knew that's what they needed to do right then. And if you're in that situation here in Austin, then you need to respond the same way. If you know what you need to do to obey Jesus Christ, then what's keeping you back? You need to act on your knowledge and your faith and get to work as a soldier of Christ. If you don't know what to do, but you want to learn, there are Bible students all through this congregation who will be happy to let you see what the Bible shows us, just like was done in Lithuania. But whatever your need is, we want to encourage you to come forward and let us know what it is while we stand and sing.